Colorado River is on the edge of another major crisis. Scientists say reservoir levels are falling back to dangerously low conditions. And as our Southern Utah correspondent Cannon Seacrest explains, without immediate cuts, millions could feel those impacts.
300 feet below the sun-baked surface of Lake Mead, locked inside a pressurized steel cage, a crew of miners stood ankle-deep in mud, staring at a massive wall of rock. Behind that stone wall was a ticking time bomb, billions of gallons of lake water pressing down with enough force to crush a tank. If that rock gave way, they wouldn't just drown. They'd be vaporized by the sheer atmospheric pressure. But turning back wasn't an option, because back up on the surface, 2 million people were running out of time and running out of water. The death of the Colorado River. Look at a map of North America, and the Colorado River looks like a vital vein pumping life straight through the arid American Southwest. For millions of years, it carved out the Grand Canyon, feeding ecosystems and eventually powering the explosive growth of 7 states. But today, if you stand on the edge of Lake Mead, you aren't looking at a roaring aquatic monument. You're looking at a dying giant, a brutal, multi-decade mega-drought. The worst the region has seen in over 12 centuries has slowly strangled the river's headwaters. Snowpack in the Rockies is melting earlier, soaking into dry soil, or evaporating before it ever hits a stream. As the water level dropped year after year, it left behind a stark, ghostly white ring baked onto the canyon walls, a haunting 160-foot bathtub ring showing just how much water has vanished into thin air. At its peak, Lake Mead held over 26 million acre-feet of water. Today, it's a shadow of its former self, hovering at fractions of its capacity. We aren't just talking about a dry summer or a bad weather cycle. We are watching the slow-motion collapse of the primary water supply for 40 million people, tens of thousands of acres of farmland, and the multi-trillion-dollar economy of the American West. When a reservoir this massive drains, it doesn't just look sad in photographs. It triggers a cascade of mechanical nightmares deep beneath the surface. Water levels began plunging toward threshold marks that hydrological engineers had only ever calculated on whiteboards in worst-case computer simulations. Marks where gravity stops working in your favor, where power generation dies, and where the massive concrete gates built to deliver water to the desert simply end up sucking air. And that left Las Vegas with a terrifying math problem. The math problem. Think of Lake Mead like a giant drinking glass, and think of Las Vegas's water intakes as plastic straws sticking down into that glass. Back in 1971, when Lake Mead was high and healthy, the Southern Nevada Water Authority built its first intake number 1, at an elevation of 1,050 feet above sea level. It was a massive steel and concrete pipe poking into the water, and for decades, it worked like a charm. But as Las Vegas boomed in the 90s, neon lights multiply, and subdivisions spread across the valley like wildfire. They knew they needed backup. So, in 2002, they finished intake number 2, dropping a second straw a little deeper down to an elevation of 1,000 feet. At the time, that felt like an unbreakable safety net. Nobody believed Lake Mead's waterline would ever fall anywhere near the 1,000-foot mark. Then, the megadrought slammed the door shut. Year after year, the water dropped past historical lows, swallowing up shorelines, uncovering long-lost shipwrecks, and creeping relentlessly downward toward those intake pipes. By the late 2000s, the terrifying math hit the wall. If the lake level dropped to 1,050 feet, intake number 1 would literally suck air. The city would lose half its water capacity overnight. If the lake fell to 1,000 feet, intake number 2 would be exposed too. At that point, 2 million residents, millions of visiting tourists, and a multi-billion-dollar resort economy would be left staring at dry pipes. And it gets worse. Hoover Dam, the massive concrete titan holding back the lake, has its own set of physics. The dam operates through intake towers that drive its hydroelectric turbines and release water downstream to California, Arizona, and Mexico. But if the lake drops to 950 feet, the water line falls below those turbine intakes. That's called the inactive pool. The dam stops generating electricity entirely. If the water keeps falling to 895 feet, you hit the ultimate apocalypse scenario: dead pool. At 895 feet, the lake surface is lower than the lowest operational outlet gates in Hoover Dam. Water stops flowing downstream completely. The river dies. Millions of acres of California cropland go bone dry. And for Las Vegas, sitting right upstream of the dam, intakes 1 and 2 would be hanging high in the desert heat, utterly useless. If you can't bring the water to the pipe, you have to drive a pipe straight into the mouth of hell. The blueprint for the impossible. When engineers sat down to design a solution, they weren't dealing with a routine infrastructure upgrade. They were staring down a multi-billion-dollar gamble with zero margin for error. The proposal was insane on its face. Dig a 3-mile-long subterranean tunnel directly beneath the floor of Lake Mead. Drop an intake head into the deepest, darkest trench of the lake bed at an elevation of 860 feet. And wire it up so that Las Vegas could keep drinking even if Hoover Dam hit dead pool and stopped flowing entirely. They dubbed it Intake Number 3, or more casually around the office, the third straw. But building it was a logistics nightmare that made standard civil engineering look like child's play. First, they couldn't just build a pipe from the shoreline outward. They had to start miles inland, excavate a massive 600-foot deep vertical access shaft straight down into the earth, and then turn 90 degrees to drill horizontally out underneath the body of water. That meant working under terrifying hydrostatic pressure. For every foot deeper you go beneath a lake bed, the weight of millions of tons of water overhead tries to find a way in. A single structural failure or an unmapped fissure in the bedrock wouldn't just leak, it would turn the tunnel into an unscheduled underwater cannon, drowning everyone inside in a matter of seconds. To make matters worse, geology isn't uniform. The rock beneath Lake Mead isn't solid, predictable granite. It's a chaotic, mangled quilt of fault zones, loose gravel, mud, pockets of toxic mud, and highly pressurized underground hot springs. The rock was so fractured and unpredictable that traditional drilling methods were completely out of the question. They needed a machine, custom-engineered for a mission that many experts openly claimed couldn't be pulled off. Of course, drawing a line on a map is easy. Drilling through literal chaos is where things got messy. The monster under the lake. Enter the Mechanical Titan, a custom-built 1,500-ton tunnel boring machine, or TBM, manufactured by the German firm Herrenknecht. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill drill. It was a massive, moving subterranean factory stretching the length of a football field, equipped with a 24-foot diameter rotating cutter head, designed to chew through rock like a giant set of high-strength steel teeth. Because the machine was operating hundreds of feet below the lake's water table, it had to be engineered like a hybrid pressurized submarine. If the cutter head hit a subterranean pocket of water or a crumbling fault line, the surrounding hydrostatic pressure would immediately try to rush inside and flood the tunnel. To stop that from happening, engineers ran the machine in what is known as slurry mode. They continuously pumped a thick, specialized clay compound called bentonite straight into the face of the drill head. This slurry created an artificial counterpressure wall, holding back thousands of tons of lake water while the cutter head chipped away at the solid rock face. Life for the human crew operating inside this underground beast was hyper-intense. Workers spent 12-hour shifts in a dark, humid, deafening metal tube trapped hundreds of feet below ground, breathing conditioned air pumped down through flexible canvas ducts. As the machine slowly crept forward, sometimes gaining only a few inches an hour, it dragged a mechanized assembly arm behind it. That arm picked up massive, precast reinforced concrete liner segments, each weighing several tons, and bolted them together into a continuous, watertight ring along the newly excavated tunnel walls. Every single ring was a critical shield. If a rubber seal blew or a concrete block cracked under the intense pressure of the surrounding rock, the entire operation would become a subterranean tomb in seconds. For years, this mechanical earthworm chewed through absolute darkness, inching closer to its final destination in the middle of the lake bed. The operators monitored live digital telemetry, constantly reading rock density, motor torque, and water pressure on screen arrays, navigating a subterranean obstacle course blindly using precision laser guides. They weren't just drilling a simple hole in the ground, they were walking a high-wire tightrope over a complex geological abyss, fully aware that any sudden shift in rock chemistry, an undetected fault line, or a massive surge in water flow could instantly trigger a cataclysmic, fatal disaster for everyone involved in this multi-million-dollar gamble. It was a grueling test of endurance, engineering prowess, and sheer human bravery happening deep beneath the surface of the desert. Then came the day the lake tried to drown the machine. Disasters deep down. In 2010, disaster struck in the darkness. The tunnel boring machine was grinding through a treacherous fault zone when the cutter head smashed into a hidden, highly pressurized pocket of water and unstable muck. Instantly, the extreme pressure blew past the bentonite slurry seal. Water came roaring into the cavern at an alarming thousands of gallons per minute, bringing hundreds of tons of liquid mud and rock debris along with it. The crew scrambled up the access shaft as the excavation zone submerged under a filthy, rising tide. It was a terrifying setback that threatened to stall the entire project indefinitely. The multi-million-dollar machine sat drowned and frozen deep under the lake bed, encased in settled mud, while the surrounding rock walls continued to weaken. To save the project, engineers had to execute a high-risk recovery operation. They drilled specialized grout injection shafts from the surface, pumping thousands of cubic yards of dense concrete directly into the surrounding geological fault zone to create an artificial solid block of rock, effectively sealing off the gushing underground springs. Workers then had to re-enter the subterranean chamber, manually dig out tons of heavy sludge, and repair the damaged TBM components piece by piece. But the lake wasn't done fighting back. Over the next 2 years, the drill encountered multiple secondary cave-ins, acidic hot water pockets that burned exposed skin, and shifting fault lines that threatened to crush the heavy steel tunneling shield like an aluminum soup can. Tragically, the extreme working conditions took a devastating human toll as well. In 2012, a veteran tunnel worker was killed when a massive pressurized grout hose burst near the tunnel face, striking him with immense physical force. A sobering, painful reminder of the incredible lethal risks involved in wresting water from deep beneath the earth. Every single foot of progress was bought with immense sacrifice, sweat, grit, and blood. Yet, despite facing catastrophic equipment drownings, shifting geological faults, hazardous working conditions, and heartbreak, the crew pushed forward, inch by agonizing inch. By mid-2014, against nearly impossible odds, the cutter head finally approached its target destination, a pre-excavated underwater vault sitting directly under the deepest point of Lake Mead, ready for the final, historic breakout. They survived the rock, but they still had to break out into open water. The final breakout and the low lake level pumping station. Reaching the target zone under the lake bed was a triumph, but it brought a whole new engineering puzzle. How do you safely punch a hole into the bottom of a massive reservoir without drowning everyone? Long before the tunneling machine arrived, a specialized marine construction rig lowered a colossal funnel-shaped concrete intake structure weighing over 2,000 tons directly into a pre-dredged trench at an elevation of 860 feet. The tunnel boring machine had to precision guide its cutter head straight into the base of this underwater vault. Once the machine was safely backed out, commercial deep-sea divers descended into the pitch-black waters to install a temporary bulkhead seal. Engineers then detonated explosive charges to breach the final rock barrier, allowing lake water to flood into the subterranean tunnel under tight control. The third straw was officially open for business. However, having an open deep water pipe is useless without a mechanism to pull that heavy liquid up to the desert surface. Enter the second phase of this multi-billion-dollar infrastructure masterpiece, the low lake level pumping station. To pull off this vertical lift, mining crews blasted a cavernous underground chamber out of solid rock, drilling 34 vertical shafts, each over 500 feet deep. Inside these shafts, engineers installed massive, custom-built submersible pumps. Each monster pump weighs roughly 79 tons and is driven by a powerful 5,000 horsepower motor. Combined, this subterranean pumping complex can draw up to 900 million gallons of water every single day directly from the deepest floor of Lake Mead. It can operate seamlessly, even if reservoir levels crash past the Hoover Dam's dead pool mark. By 2020, as Lake Mead's waterline continued its alarming downward slide, intake number 3 and its underground pumping heart officially took over as Las Vegas's primary life support system. The $1.5 billion engineering gamble had paid off, creating an unprecedented technological defense against absolute hydrological collapse. The billion-dollar straw was finally in the cup, but who was going to let them drink? The law of the river. Engineering an underwater miracle is one thing, but navigating the messy world of water politics is another fight entirely. We have to rewind a century to a fateful decision made in 1922, the signing of the Colorado River Compact. Representatives from 7 western states gathered at a quiet lodge in New Mexico to slice up the river's massive flow. But they made a catastrophic mistake right out of the gate. They based their water allocations on hydrological data from the early 1900s, a period that climate scientists now know was one of the wettest, most abnormally rainy multi-decade stretches in the last 1,000 years. They foolishly assumed the Colorado River naturally yielded roughly 17 million acre-feet of water every year, and they divided up that imaginary liquid gold accordingly. California, boasting huge agricultural interests and aggressive legal teams, snagged the lion's share of the lower basin allocation at 4.4 million acre-feet. Arizona secured 2.8 million. And Nevada? Back in 1922, Las Vegas was little more than a dusty railroad pit stop surrounded by scrub brush and coyotes. Believing Nevada would never amount to much, state negotiators walked away with a tiny fraction of the pie, a meager 300,000 acre-feet per year. That was less than 2% of the river's assumed total flow. Decades passed, and the desert exploded. Las Vegas transformed into an international mega-resort capital with glowing casinos, sprawling suburban communities, and over 2 million permanent residents. Yet, its legal right to water remained locked into that century-old, deeply flawed document. As the mega-drought shrank the river's actual flow down toward 12 or 13 million acre-feet, the mathematical illusion shattered. The lower basin states found themselves embroiled in fierce legal backstabbing, arguing over who should take the biggest supply cuts. Las Vegas quickly realized that California and Arizona would gladly watch Nevada go dry to protect their own massive agricultural allotments. Having the smallest legal slice on the river meant Nevada couldn't waste a single drop, and it certainly couldn't count on its neighbors for mercy. With the smallest allocation on the river, Vegas couldn't afford to waste a single drop. The Vegas magic trick. Facing a brutal legal cap of just 300,000 acre-feet per year, Las Vegas had no choice but to pull off one of the greatest hydrological miracles in human history. To survive, the city engineered a closed-loop system so efficient that it defied basic belief. Here is the secret that trips up almost everyone. Nearly 100% of all indoor water used in southern Nevada is captured, purified, and returned straight back into Lake Mead. Every time a tourist flushes a toilet at a Bellagio high roller suite, takes a 10-minute shower in a strip hotel, or washes dishware in a world-class restaurant, that water doesn't simply disappear down a drain into the desert sand. Instead, it flows directly through hundreds of miles of municipal sewer lines down to state-of-the-art water reclamation facilities. There, the wastewater undergoes an intense multi-stage filtration process involving advanced biological treatment, microfiltration, membrane bioreactors, and heavy ultraviolet disinfection. Within hours, that dirty wastewater is purified to standards that meet or exceed raw lake water quality. Then comes the real accounting genius, the return flow credit system. Under Colorado River accounting rules, for every gallon of treated water, Las Vegas pumps back down the underground wash into Lake Mead. The city earns a credit allowing it to pull a replacement gallon back out of the reservoir. Think of it like a subterranean bank account. If Las Vegas draws out 400,000 acre-feet of water from Lake Mead in a given year, but recycles and returns 200,000 acre-feet of treated indoor wastewater back to the lake, its net consumption charge is only 200,000 acre-feet. That clever loop keeps the city comfortably below its legal 300,000 acre-foot ceiling, even while adding hundreds of thousands of new suburban residents and hosting tens of millions of international tourists every single year. This closed indoor loop explains why the famous fountains, massive casino swimming pools, and lavish hotel displays aren't actually draining the desert dry. The water features run almost entirely on recycled gray water or private wells, recirculating the same liquid over and over again with negligible evaporation loss. Because of this intense recycling engine, Las Vegas actually consumes significantly less water today than it did 20 years ago. Despite booming in population, the city effectively broke the traditional economic link between urban growth and water consumption. Indoor water usage isn't what threatens Las Vegas. The real enemy was always outdoors, baking under the relentless desert sun. Recycling indoor water is one thing. What about the green lawns in the desert? Turf wars and the water police. While indoor water loops back to the lake with near-perfect efficiency, outdoor water usage represents a completely different hydrologic beast. When an automatic sprinkler sprays a lush, carpeted green lawn in 100-degree desert heat, a massive percentage of that water evaporates directly into thin air or gets absorbed by plant roots, vanishing forever from the local watershed. In the dry climate of southern Nevada, outdoor watering is considered pure consumptive use, water that can never be recovered, recycled, or credited back. To put a dead stop to this continuous drain, Nevada lawmakers took unprecedented action by passing Assembly Bill 356. This aggressive, first-of-its-kind state law placed an outright legal ban on what officials termed non-functional turf, decorative grass sitting in suburban master-planned developments, office park entryways, apartment complexes, and street medians was officially declared illegal. To speed up compliance, the Southern Nevada Water Authority launched an aggressive financial incentive campaign famously known as Cash for Grass. The utility literally paid residential homeowners and commercial property managers up to $3 per square foot to tear out thirsty lawn turf and replace it with climate-appropriate desert landscaping, such as crushed gravel, native cacti, agave, and drip-irrigated desert flora. To enforce these strict watering rules, the local water district created a specialized enforcement team that feels straight out of a crime drama, the Water Patrol. Operating in marked hybrid vehicles, these dedicated compliance officers patrol suburban neighborhoods during the pre-dawn hours, systematically hunting for broken sprinkler heads, misdirected spray nozzles, improper watering days, and excess urban runoff trickling down residential gutters. When a violation is spotted, officers record video evidence and issue mandatory warning citations. Repeat violators face heavy, escalating financial penalties slapped directly onto their monthly municipal water bills. The results of this aggressive urban transformation were nothing short of staggering. Over 2 decades, community members tore up tens of millions of square feet of grass, enough turf to stretch across thousands of football fields. This massive landscape shift saved billions of gallons of non-recoverable water every single year, dramatically lowering the region's overall water footprint. Through a mix of financial incentives and strict legal mandates, Las Vegas successfully transformed itself into a global gold standard for arid zone urban survival. The city proved to the international community that a major metropolitan area can sustain population growth without draining its surrounding natural environment dry. Yet, despite Sin City's remarkable conservation success, these local victories only address one small piece of a much larger, interconnected hydrological crisis brewing across the entire American West. Vegas fixed its own house, but the rest of the West is still burning. The straw that eats the river. The completion of intake number 3 and the low lake level pumping station gave Las Vegas an undeniable engineering victory, but it also exposed a dark, uncomfortable truth about the future of the Colorado River. The $1.5 billion project is effectively a high-tech insurance policy designed for a single player in a 7-state game of survival. While intake number 3 allows Nevada to drink from the very bottom of Lake Mead, it does absolutely nothing to fix the systemic water deficit starving the rest of the American West. Consider the brutal reality of a dead pool scenario at elevation 895 feet. If water levels in Lake Mead ever drop below that critical threshold, the Hoover Dam completely stops releasing water downstream. When those massive concrete gates go dry, the Colorado River effectively terminates at the dam face. For downstream users, including the booming agricultural valleys of Southern California, the cities of Phoenix and Tucson via the Central Arizona Project, and the entire nation of Mexico, the water supply vanishes instantly. Tens of thousands of acres of fruit, vegetable, and alfalfa farms would dry up within weeks, triggering national food supply shocks and economic chaos. Yet, deep beneath that stagnant, dying lake, Las Vegas's intake number 3 would keep sucking water without missing a beat. Because its intake head sits at an elevation of 860 feet, Nevada can continue pumping its legal allocation out of the reservoir long after the river downstream has ceased to exist. In the hyper-competitive world of Western water rights, intake number 3 gives Nevada the ultimate tactical leverage. It guarantees that while neighboring states face total hydrological collapse, Sin City's taps will remain pressurized. This reality has fundamentally altered the power dynamics among lower basin water managers. For decades, California held all the legal cards, using its senior water rights to bully smaller states during drought negotiations. But by building a system that bypasses Hoover Dam entirely, Nevada effectively neutralized California's legal armor. Las Vegas proved that in a modern climate crisis, physical access to deep water matters far more than historical pieces of paper signed in 1922. However, this technological advantage comes with a profound moral and environmental dilemma. Is it sustainable for a single metropolitan center to survive on a dying reservoir while entire agricultural ecosystems downstream turn to dust? Intake number 3 ensured that Las Vegas won't die of thirst today, but it also signaled the start of a grim new era where cities must out-engineer their neighbors simply to stay alive. The $1.5 billion straw didn't solve the desert's water crisis. It merely decided who gets to drink the last remaining drops when the well finally runs dry. Does saving one city mean leaving everyone else out in the cold? What happens when the straw runs out? Las Vegas pulled off an astonishing $1.5 billion miracle. proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that cutting-edge technology and ruthless urban conservation can push back the boundaries of an unforgiving desert environment. But even the deepest, most sophisticated intake pipe in the world is ultimately subject to the unyielding, immutable laws of atmospheric physics. If mountain snowpacks in the Rockies continue to dwindle, ambient temperatures keep soaring, and the Colorado River's average annual flow permanently shrinks, even the absolute bottom of Lake Mead will eventually dry out into cracked clay. The existential question facing the American West is no longer just about how deep engineers can drive concrete pipes into the earth, but how human beings will fundamentally reimagine living in arid landscapes. Las Vegas has undeniably shown the world that major metropolitan centers can adapt through aggressive water reclamation, total turf elimination, and massive technological bravery. In doing so, Nevada established a crucial global playbook for drought-stricken regions across Australia, North Africa, and the Middle East. Yet, even the most brilliant engineering feat cannot synthesize rain out of thin air, nor can it indefinitely replenish over-allocated dying river basins. As continental weather patterns continue to shift dramatically, the hard lessons learned from Lake Mead's subterranean tunneling project will dictate how tens of millions of people live, grow food, and build infrastructure in the high-stakes decades ahead. The historic battle for the Colorado River is far from over. It is simply entering an intense, volatile new chapter where ancient water laws, high-tech infrastructure, and hard environmental limits collide head-on. Intake number 3 successfully brought Las Vegas back from the absolute edge of hydrological catastrophe, buying the city precious time and securing its survival for the foreseeable future. But as the entire region grows steadily hotter and drier, one heavy, inescapable question continues to hang over the glittering lights of the desert oasis. When every technological safeguard has been pushed to its maximum physical limit, what happens when the straw finally runs out? Las Vegas proved that even in the face of a catastrophic mega-drought, extreme engineering and bold conservation can rewrite a city's destiny. By driving a $1.5 billion intake pipe into the bottom of Lake Mead and recycling nearly every drop of indoor water, Nevada built a blueprint for urban survival in an increasingly thirsty world. But as climate pressures intensify and river basins across the globe continue to shrink, the battle for our most precious resource is far from over. The real test won't just be whether we can out-engineer nature, but whether we can learn to balance human ambition with the natural limits of our planet before the water runs dry. What happened deep beneath Lake Mead is more than just a local story. It is a glimpse into the high-stakes future facing drought-stricken communities worldwide. From massive subterranean tunnels to aggressive water policy, the decisions we make today will define how future generations live, build, and adapt in a changing landscape. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden systems shaping our world, hit that subscribe button to catch every new episode.